President Washington versus the Freedom Constitution. Registering vessels. In 1789, there were no automobiles, there were no cars, there were no planes, but there were boats. And an act got signed that required everyone who owned a boat in the United States to register that boat. It was a quite lengthy act by Congress, and it recognized that some boats were used for personal use, and then other boats were used for commercial uses. Now, to register a ship in the United States, you had to be a United States citizen, and that boat had to be docked and used in the United States. And if the boat was of a certain size, or the ship was of a certain size, then the United States Treasury required a bond to register that ship. The larger the boat, the larger the bond. And registering a boat or a ship wasn't free either. I'm actually going to read from the act. And it be further enacted that the fees and allowances for the several duties to be performed in virtue of this act and the distribution of the same shall be as follows, to wit. So here's what they're charging to register ships. For the first register or certificate of record granted for every ship or vessel, there shall be paid to the collector granting the same the sum of $2. For every subsequent one, $1.50. For every certificate of enrollment, 50 cents. For every license to trade between the different districts of the United States or to carry on the bank or whale fishery for 1 year, 50 cents. For every entry of inward cargo directed to be made in conformity with this act, and for receiving of and qualifying for every manifest of vessel licensed to trade as aforementioned, 60 cents. For a permit to land goods of foreign growth or manufacture, 20 cents. For every permit to proceed to the place of destination, 25 cents. For taking every bond required by this act, 20 cents. So you can see it didn't just require bonds, it required people to pay to have those bonds created. And in 1789, what seems like a very small amount today was a very significant amount then. Well, how does this compare to the Freedom Constitution? Well, here in modern times, we have many more kinds of vessels than just boats or ships. We have planes, we have automobiles, we have motorcycles, we have trains, just to name a few. And the Freedom Constitution does not prohibit the federal government from requiring people to register their vessels. However, it does have very strong policies regarding taxes and profit collection by the governments of the United States. Article 11, Sections 12 and 13 read, "The Congress shall have the power to create and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States only when such creation and collection aligns with the rights and prohibitions contained within the section and must be uniform throughout the entire United States, including all lands, territories, districts, and other areas governed by the United States, excepting for sovereign tribal lands, where the Congress shall have no authority to create or collect any taxes, duties, imposts, and excises." Section 13. All taxes, duties, or other sources of financial burden placed upon citizens, non-citizens, and business entities shall not be created unless such burdens do not violate the following permissions and prohibitions. And we talked about the permissions and prohibitions. For citizens, they're not allowed to pay more than 30% of their income towards taxes. Licensing and registering fees are taxes. For non-citizens, it's 40% of their income towards taxes. And while 30% and 40% seem like a lot to put towards taxes, it's significantly less than most Americans pay now when you consider income tax, Social Security tax, sales tax, excise tax, real estate tax, gas tax, service fees, toll roads, and all other profiting mechanisms used by the governments of the United States, the federal government, the state government, and local governments. So while President Washington regulating and requiring registration of vessels was correct and recognized by the Freedom Constitution, the extra taxation is not aligned with the Freedom Constitution, because you cannot have safety without oppression when there's overtaxation, and the Freedom Founders know you deserve safety without oppression.